What's going on, everybody? I'm Coach Mike Dub here with another edition of the Commanders Weekly Recap. Here, a part of the Lockdown Defense Sports Network. Thank you all for joining us. You've been rocking with us all season long. And listen, we're here to bring the finale, the season finale, that's right, of the Commanders Weekly Recap. If you've been following us all year, you know that, we pretty much get into the weeds of things after each game, going over what went well, who are the stars, who needed some help, whatever the case is, and we preview the next week. So, of course, as you know, if you've been following the NFL season, you know that the Commander season has been done for quite a few weeks now, and we've not only been done for the last few weeks since the end of the season, but since we've been mathematically eliminated, the focus has been kind of shifted towards finishing out this long, drawn out season that was very disappointing for us, which we're going to get into, and also preparing for our next step. So, we decided to do a quick recap of all things Commanders when it came down to the 2025 season, the good, the bad, the ugly, and also just a general state of the franchise going forward. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it and get into things, right? So, of course, this was a disappointing season for a few different reasons. Number one, because we went 5-12. Number two, we had a 7-game losing streak in the middle of the season. Number three, we're going to get into the personnel issues. And of course, number four, coming off of the year that we had last year, all the excitement, new ownership, new coaches, new players, star quarterback, everything was heading in the right direction at this time last year. We were preparing to play the Eagles in the NFC Championship, and the energy was just unmatched where they came to the franchise. Fast forward 365 days later, here we are, NFC Championship weekend, and we're searching for answers as to what happened, how did the wheels fall off, and most importantly, where do we go from here? So, as you can see, once again, disappointing season, 5-12. And I mentioned before, 7 game. I think it was actually an 8-game losing streak, and they were sandwiched in between a few wins, a divisional win against the Giants, a few other wins early on. But we went through a really tough stretch throughout the middle of the season and never really recovered from it. And we just searched to find some consistency both on offense and defense. We searched to stay healthy. That was an issue for us for a long time. And we just were never really able to get over the hump, and find our groove throughout the whole season. So it was definitely one of those seasons where you couldn't wait for it to end. I remember probably like around week 10, somewhere in there, maybe week 11, where you just knew that this was want to be a long season, and we needed to hurry up, have it end, so that we can pick up the pieces and reshuffle and try to go from there. And it's very rare that you have that feeling that early on, and it's not a good feeling. Of course, as a Commander fan, we've had it before, but like I said, this year was just a little bit different because coming off of the year that we had last year, and really just felt like one long continuous, I guess, result of that NFC Championship, where it was just a disappointing performance. We came out this year, and we had multiple disappointing performances to cap that off. So 5-12 is where we ended up. Obviously, our draft position is pretty much solidified in the top 10, I believe. So that's going to be something that we look for. And we gotta focus on getting better overall. Like I said, it's not a spot that you ever want to be in as a fan, but it's not the first time that we've been there. So, double checking, yeah, we have a seventh overall pick. So definitely chances for us to nab somebody, to get a playmaker, and to turn this thing around. So let's start with the good, right? Um, we did see some good things in our run game. Of course, Bill was the star that came out and that everybody knew about, the rookie late draft pick. Had some big games. You kind of hit a stretch toward the end of the season where you didn't hear from him a lot, and that's when our other running backs stepped up. We had McNichols step up, and just it was almost like a running back by committee, and that was something that was good. To the fact that we almost talked about, or there were talkings about when we made the move with our offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, who won't be returning next year. part of the conversation was, the team wanted to go Dan Quinn, and the team wanted to shift more towards a run game, and they thought that we should run the ball a little bit more, and kind of focus on that going forward. And part of the reason why is because we had some success with it last year. So shout out to Bill, shout out to McNichols, shout out to the rest of the running back room. Hopefully, of course, we get Eckler back healthy. If he's going to be back, that might not happen. We'll see. But either way, of course, Bill will be back next year, and it kind of made it worth it to a certain extent that we were able to trade B Rob early on. Of course, B Rob was good for us, but that you could see the writing on the wall that he probably wasn't going to be the future for this franchise at running back. And Bill was a more than capable guy that came in and got a few rookie of the week considerations as well. So definitely a bright spot there. Also want to shout out Debo. And Debo is one of those guys where, he was a high value trade option for us. And he was somebody who, we were looking to come in and be what he was in San Francisco. And he for all the injury questions and all the health issues we had throughout the season, Debo really wasn't, you know, a problem for us when it came to health, which is surprising because that's been something that has been a point of contention throughout his career. However, he was probably one of our most healthy receivers throughout the year. Had a few games that he took off, but other than that, you really can't argue with his production when he was out in the field. And it would have been nice to see him and Terry and Jaden all healthy at the same time, a little bit more consistently, so we can get that chemistry going. But overall, when Debo was there, I like what we saw from him. It's going to be interesting to figure out what the direction is going forward. Of course, it's going to come down to dollars and cents, but I like what I saw from Debo, and I just wish we were able to capitalize on him a little bit more. And on that same token, another veteran that was proven and continues to be a stalwart, Bobby Wagner. Now, this is an interesting one because if you see Bobby Wagner in coverage, then obviously that he shouldn't be in coverage as much as he was. It's definitely a mismatch with some of the matchups that he was put in position with, but that comes down to coaching. Hopefully we could put him in better positions to where we can capitalize off his strengths and maybe even have a different package in on passing downs, or figure out a way to keep him from being a liability in pass coverage. But when it came to the run game and when it came to just his overall leadership, Bobby Wagner was who we know Bobby Wagner to be. So it's not a lot of bright spots on that defense, but Bobby Wagner was one. Number one being his consistency. So definitely want to give him his flowers there. As far as the bad, who struggled for us? So you see here two members of our secondary, both Marshawn Lattimore and Quan Martin. Both of them had difficult years, continuously being beat in coverage, continuously being out of position in the form of Quan Martin. There was so many miscommunications, specifically in the secondary, and it was just a bad look for the defense overall. A lot of big plays, a lot of blown coverages, a lot of mismatches, just not being able to keep up. Health may have been an issue, whatever the case was. It just was not a good look for us on the defensive side of the ball. And it came down to, the person that has to take the brunt of it is our defensive coordinator. So Joe Witt wasn't able to figure out, something that could work for our defense. He actually got his some of his duties taken away from him. Dan Quinn took over towards the end of the year, and rightfully so. So I think the writing was on the wall that this just wasn't going to work out going forward. We wanted it to work out pretty bad, but it seemed like we just we couldn't get things going. And we're going to talk about this when we get into the ugly in the next slide. But a part of defense is the ultimate team aspect of the game, because in order for one thing to work, the other things have to work. So our secondary struggled specifically towards, the latter end of the season and the middle stretch of the season throughout those tough games. And part of the reason is because our pass rush struggled, and part of the reason why our pass rush struggled was because we were decimated by injury. So we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. This was a long year for us as far as guys going down, and not just any guys going down, but key guys going down at different parts of the season, to where we never really got the consistency and got the chemistry on either side of the ball that we needed for our team to operate as a unit. So we started out, I mentioned this, at the week one review playing against the Giants, and granted it was the Giants, they proved to not be a very good team as we beat them twice. But that week one game, what we saw when we were as healthy as we had ever been in the season, of course, very first game of the week, we saw a D line that was getting pressure, specifically with our two ends, Dietrich Wise and Dorrance Armstrong. Deron Payne had an amazing game. Ken Law even came in. Just that defensive front seven really looked amazing that first game. And fast forward to week two and week 3 and 4, and we started to see guys drop like flies. We lost both of our pass rushing defensive ends, and Wise and Dorrance Armstrong. Those guys were playing amazing, and they both went down. I think that affected the play of uh, of Deron Payne. His production dropped off because they weren't able to get the depth on that defensive line that they normally had. Uh, and then the same thing that goes with Austin Eckler. We talked about that run game. He went down early in the season. We weren't able to utilize him as not only another aspect of the run game and a committee that did well, but also a pass catcher and an extra playmaker out of the backfield, a kick returner for us and active in special teams. So another big loss. Terry went down early on. Obviously, after signing that contract, like I mentioned before, Debo was a huge part of our team this year. It would have been nice to have him and Terry on the field at the same time. Even in the secondary, Trey Amos came in. He had some flashes. He looked like he could be doing something. Needed as many reps as possible. He went down towards the end of the season. Of course, we lost Zach Ertz. That was towards the back end, one of the last games of the season. So throughout the year, that really wasn't an issue. But of course, that was kind of the icing on the cake for us when he got hurt. And most importantly, our quarterback was never able to get on the field consistently. And that's going to be something that's going to be talked about throughout the entire offseason. How do we keep Jaden Daniels healthy? What do we need to do from a coaching standpoint to kind of, I don't want to say put him in a bubble, but put him in a position to where, his body's not on the line as much as possible. And what does he need to do on his part to protect himself? So that's the major question. But I'm not going to sit here and say that our season ended up the way it ended up because we didn't have our starting quarterback, because Marcus Mariota played very well for us, actually, and came through for us. So, is Jaden Daniels different? Of course he's different. But at the same time, with Jaden being out there, depending on what everybody else is looking like, as we mentioned before, a lot of the problems being on defense, there's no telling what we would have looked like with Jaden Daniels being healthy. But it would have been nice to see it. Of course, these young guys need as much reps as possible. So hopefully they get a speedy recovery and we can bounce back. But injuries definitely told the story of the team this year. So finally, what's the state of the franchise? Where are we going from here after disappointing season? I just mentioned it. The first and most important thing is we have to get and stay healthy, and that's not something that you can control. It's not something that you have ultimate autonomy over as a team or as an athlete. But if we can do that, then I think that we'll see a lot better results going forward. And even though you can't control how healthy you stay and those things like that, what we can do is we can focus on building our depth and building a strong team from top to bottom so that we're not so top heavy. That's easier said than done, but that starts with the draft. It starts with free agency, and it starts with us getting a little bit younger and not being able and not being afraid to play these younger guys. We were a little old on this team this year, and I understand why. Coming off of the year last year, they wanted to capitalize off of that, get veterans, get proven guys, and guys that played well last year. We mentioned Bobby Wagner. We brought in Von Miller. Uh, Marshawn Lattimore, very proven guys. Um, and of course Zach Ertz and some other guys that have been around the league for a while. But clearly, there were times where it just looked like we couldn't keep up for whatever reason. I mentioned Bobby Wagner in coverage. Frankie Louvu had a bad year. Marshawn Lattimore looked like he lost a step. Von Miller, I mentioned our two starting pass rushers going down. Von Miller clearly not in a position at this stage in his career to be that every down rush, edge. So, it may be time for us to look other places because we have to build and we have to get some consistency and we have to get some depth. And as much as we love the production and the heyday of those veterans and that leadership of those veterans, I think it's time for us to start getting younger and finding production otherwise. And that will ultimately lead to consistency, which we need. We weren't able to get any chemistry. We weren't able to find any consistency really on the offensive side or the defensive side because it's a trickle down effect. Guys get injured. Guys just aren't able to be on the field at the same time. Most notably, like I said, I don't know how many games we were able to see Jaden Daniels, Debo, and Terry all on the same field at the same time, but it wasn't often. It didn't happen often. And individually, they had flashes. You saw, Terry when he was healthy, he had came on towards the end of the year and looked like vintage Terry. We saw Debo, as I mentioned before, at times he was the only weapon we had on offense, and he held it down. Jaden Daniels, like I mentioned, he just wasn't really able to be on the field as much as we needed him to. So, if they're able to get on the field, they're able to build some consistency in addition to that run game, that'll be great. If we're able to do the same thing on the defensive line, I mentioned before, we started out very strong with the defensive line. Injuries kind of tore us apart. If we can get a consistent rotation, consistent depth, then I think we have some fresh legs, fresh rushers, and our guys will be flying around, getting to the quarterback, which essentially helps out our defensive backs and really everybody. So, it all tied together. It was a domino effect. One thing led to the next thing. It wasn't a good year, but there is a path forward going. So be sure to tune in throughout the off season, free agency, coaching changes, draft, all of the above to find out what our next move is, where do we go from here, and how do we bounce back from this disappointing season, not only for the Commanders, but also tune in to our other networks to hear about the Chargers and the Chiefs. And of course, every other content, all the content that we put out just in general for the NFL. This is where things get shaken in the off season. It's been a long season. It's been a great season, and we look forward to continue. But it doesn't stop for us. It doesn't stop after the Super Bowl. We're going to keep on rolling with more content. So be sure to tune in. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know what moves your team needs to make, what moves you see our teams need to make, and what are you looking forward to in the off season. And of course, you can catch us on all of our connections, social networks. Follow us for all the content. Be on the lookout for our, different channels that are going to be starting soon. And we can't wait to keep dropping great stuff for you. So that's all I got for you. Once again, this is season finale of the Commanders Dub Report. But stay on the lookout throughout all season for all things related to the NFL, all things related to football. And we hope everybody has a great off season. See you soon.